So today I woke up with this inspiration, this excitement to share a few quotes that I love, to make a series of videos and share a few of the spiritual quotes that I've come upon over the years and I felt inspired by because they clarified an aspect of reality. And the thing about these quotes is that, and quotes in general, is that it's not necessarily just about a quote. It's not just a quote. Usually a quote is a reflection of an entire paradigm or level of consciousness or frequency, you could say, frequency of truth. So a lot of these quotes, which I'll be sharing in a series of videos, and I'm actually going to put them under a playlist on the channel so you can find them all together in a playlist of some of my favorite quotes. And again, the thing about these quotes is that they themselves come from a certain spiritual perspective of life, of the world. But then, as I'm going to explain them and share my own perspective on them, what you'll see is that they allow for a general explanation of reality, using these quotes as some pointers, as kind of keys, entry keys into an entire worldview. And the worldview that I come from in these videos and on this channel is one where we're moving from the empowerment of the self to the surrender to the divine. So we're moving from self-led life to life-led life, or life led by the Tao, by the divine. So it's that kind of transition that I'm talking about. It's the movement from doership to non-doership, from the mind to the mystical. And I guess that's what I'm passionate about, maybe being a kind of bridge for people. So, the first quote I want to share with you in this video is one from OSHO. So, OSHO is probably one of my favorite spiritual teachers and mystics. A few years ago, actually 5-6 years ago, I had a wave of interest in Osho and his work. So I kept buying book after book, as you can see on my shelf here. Most of these books are from Osho. So I had a wave for a few months of really feeling intrigued by his work and resonating with it, because let's say at that time I was ready for it and it was relevant for me. It was just the right teacher at the right time. You know what they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. You could say that when there's the right receptivity and kind of frequency, we find the right teachers who have what we need. So at the time I kept buying, maybe I bought like 20 books, 25 books, only in a physical format. I have like 15 or something in my house, and then I have a few on Kindle, a few on Audible. So I've really spent some time at the time with him. And I remember one of the books that I bought was a book where he was replying to his readers. So he was sending letters, he was receiving letters and replying to his readers, and very short replies. So people were sending different questions about different problems and challenges they were having, or observations. And he would give them these short replies. So it was a book with his letters to his readers. I know there were like 50 letters or something like that. And I loved that kind of format as well, because it was so practical. It was so direct and real from his side. It applied to real concerns that people had. And one of the questions there was a lady trying to solve a problem, and in that reply there was one quote that stood out for me and kind of shifted. It really touched me and shifted a lot for me at the time. And what he said was, the way you solve a problem is by abandoning the need to solve it. Which sounds like the weirdest answer, right? So you solve a problem by abandoning the need to solve it. So initially it makes no sense. But actually, if you have a bit more clarity, a bit more spiritual context, this makes perfect sense. So what he's really saying is that, at least the way I see it, and I've come to see it, is that there is life's intelligence that we are part of, and there's the mind, the egoic mind, that feels separate from life's intelligence or from life's flow. So the way the ego solves a problem is by abandoning its need, which is a reflection of the ego, its need to solve the problem, and what remains is the divine flow that moves you. So it ends up solving the problem in a better way. Could be without you, could be through you. Because, you as the body, let's say, or as the being, inside of you so you are already the flow, you are already life's intelligence. It's just that there's an additional layer, which we could say it's the egoic overlay, the mental sense of insecurity and seeking. And that egoic overlay is insecure by nature. And it's always looking for security, right? And when we come from this egoic, insecure overlay, we end up creating more trouble. So we are reactive to life, not responsive to life, not creative, we're reactive. So his reply pointed directly at this distinction, that when you abandon the need, which is reactive, which is egoic, to solve a problem, what remains is the problem solving itself. So when the ego gives up, the Tao remains. You could say when the ego gives up, right? You give it up to life. You outsource the need to solve the problem to life itself. And in a way, you are still life, and the problem will still end up being solved probably through you, or even beyond you, through other people. The circumstances might change, where you might realize that actually it wasn't a problem in the first place. But that's the beauty of these simple answers, is that they point to a different reality, you could say, to the reality, the functional reality versus the fictional reality of the mind, which that distinction is a video in itself, actually. But yeah, another thing I would say is that from the spiritual perspective, when it comes to problems and suffering and trouble in life, I would say that life, we are part of life, so it's actually life that creates the problems. Because, in this emergent way, we arrive at certain shortcomings in ceilings in our development, and those shortcomings reflect in problems, whether it's personal shortcomings or circumstantial shortcomings in the world. So the problems are really just reflections of certain shortcomings or weaknesses or places to grow. And when life arrives at those points, or we arrive at those points, naturally we are going to grow and evolve as a result of those issues. Let's say external issues, but even internal ones. And so life creates the problem, but also life solves it. So that's one way to frame it as well. Problems are not necessarily your problems. If you think you're a separate being from life, then you think it's your problem and you feel this pressure to solve it. But actually, if you recognize yourself as part of life, as part of the flow, and the egoic mind begins to kind of become more transparent and relax and dissolve, then you realize that it's life's problem, really. And the ego actually is meant to surrender to life, and it's meant to become more transparent and begin to dissolve, really begin to outgrow itself or transcend itself and give way to that which it is part of already to take care of itself. So give way to life to take care of itself. So life creates the problem, life solves the problem in this kind of mystical way. And how do you solve a problem? By abandoning the need to solve it.